Welcome to the Lifetime at Work podcast, episode 23. My name is Greg Martin, a guy navigating a life on Bay Street while also being an entrepreneur, which has made me realize that the journey to find the perfect job is never ending. So in my spare time, I record this podcast where I like to explore other people and their careers. I talk to people from all backgrounds to tell the real stories about their jobs and why they do them. For you, it's a chance to meet different people, and if I'm doing my job right, who knows? Their stories may inspire your life or your future career in some way. And in this episode, we're talking all about anxiety in the workplace, that whole work-life balance thing, and the feeling people get when they just can't stop thinking, I'm meant for more. So let's play the intro music and begin. If you're a fan of this podcast, you can follow me going to lifetimeatwork.com. There you can find all the episodes. You can also follow me on Instagram. I am gregmartin.work. This episode, like them all, is brought to you by Farmer Prepared Meals. It is the prepared meals company that I own, and we deliver across Ontario. We got lots of really cool stuff, including these taco kits going on right now, as well as flatbreads and a bunch of new things coming down the pipe. If you've not checked us out or gotten delivery from us, it's just something you have to try if you get tired of cooking. So go to farmr.ca and order delivery for next week. You may have missed me a little bit. There has not been a new episode in a little while, probably about a month and a half. I've been all over doing a bunch of different things, have a bit of a new job going on here, as well as kids at home, given the most recent lockdown that we've had here in Ontario. And so I had to take a bit of a hiatus, and this is what I am kind of calling season 2, even though we're just going to keep rolling here with the different episodes. But a bunch of new cool things. I've been still recording episodes and finally now have the time to release some. So I'm excited to do that and excited for a bunch of really neat and cool things that I've been working on now. And I'll keep you up to date with what's going on with me. But I wanted to get going on this episode and just introduce Sandra Francisco, who's a great guest, great person in that she's so open with talking about a lot of the things that have gone on with her personally. And she's been really struggling a lot, or had struggled a lot, with anxiety and just structuring her life, figuring out coping mechanisms to work with her job and her life skills, and tackling trying to do something on her own and being in the corporate world. And anyways, just a bunch of things that we sort of get into with her story. I'm not going to spoil too much of it now, because you'll hear the great story from her through this interview. But I think it just highlights that as I bring more and more people on that have these sorts of feelings of just work overwhelming them, being too much, just one day having to leave, if you ever do have those feelings, you're not alone. There are lots of remedies to it. It doesn't mean that you have to leave your life or never go back to that job, or feel embarrassed that all of your work colleagues or whomever will think that you're weak or incapable. I think it can happen to anyone, and it does happen, and things can kind of bottle up. And I think that's what this episode kind of comes away with, or at least that's what sort of resonated with me, because there's a lot that you can do from it. And sometimes it's actually a very positive sign that then launches you into something else pretty cool and pretty unique and pretty great. So that's what happened to Sandra. She's now a coach. She helps a lot of people who are in this weird work situation where they, as she puts it, say, I think I'm meant for more, but I don't know what to do. How do I launch this while managing my life? And so she does that now. It's very different than what she did. And I'm going to leave it to her now to tell the rest of the story. So here, hope you enjoy the interview with Sandra Francisco. So Sandra, welcome to the Lifetime at Work podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Why don't you start? I like to start this way of just sort of getting you to tell me your background quickly, just for a minute or two, and we'll kind of take it from there.
Yeah, so I actually spent 15 years working in corporate. My formal education is in business and in commerce, but I started out working in information technology at the boom of the internet in 2000. So kind of got derailed into that technical world for a while, then came back into marketing, still product development inside of corporate. And then 11 years ago is when I started consulting, and coaching came a bit later, but it was when I left my corporate job in kind of gained my wings of independence.
Exactly. And so maybe just give a description sort of what you do now. We'll get more into it in more detail, but how would you sort of describe what you do today?
Yeah, so my focus today is really to help new and aspiring entrepreneurs to go from idea to profit while they also make room and focus on getting to know themselves, the inner work, the prioritization of well-being. So it's really that interplay of business growth as well as personal growth that lovely comes together so that you can have profit, of course, if you're running a business, but also fulfillment.
And so is the idea, I guess, that a business goal is not just I'm trying to make the biggest business that makes the most money and the highest profit. It is, how do I start something that fits with my life well? Is that kind of a good, decent characterization?
Yes. So of course, there's going to be people that all that they can see is profit and business, and I have absolutely no judgment. That is where they're at. And there's a million coaches out there that can help them.
Yeah.
But for me, yes. So the clients that are ideal for me, they're already asking those questions. Well, how do I do this where I can make the money that I want, but also have the lifestyle that I want, and also be the person that I want? Yes, that's the distinction.
And so do you find that leads people to a lot of things like coaching or working for themselves, I guess I would say, like consulting in some way where they may not be working in the corporate world? And I think that is sort of leading into probably what I want to talk to you most about throughout the sort of conversation, is kind of that difference between working a corporate job, i.e. for a large company like you did, versus sort of working for yourself. But yeah, probably my question here is does a lot of people you are working with, they work for themselves?
Yes, my clients are all entrepreneurs. So I don't have any clients. I mean, I will say that I have clients that still have jobs and they're entrepreneurs like part-time.
Yeah.
But they definitely are all doing some sort of business, the clients that I work with. Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. And so maybe before we kind of get into that then and a bit more detail, maybe talk a little bit about your education and sort of how you came to the realization going through your post-secondary is probably the case, but what were you sort of thinking when you were in university? What were you after? How was your view of the world then in terms of what you were trying to achieve and what you thought, hey, I'm going to enter this working world, go into the corporate world and begin my career?
Yeah, so actually in university, my plan actually since I was probably 4 years old was to be a lawyer, and I was determined, but I just had this desire to also learn business. So I thought I would take a commerce degree as my first degree and then go to law school.
Right.
And the program that I took, the commerce degree, was actually a co-op program or an internship. So I started to work in second year. We started to have internships. So I just got into that corporate world so early. I was like turning 20 and I was already working full time, because once I actually did an internship, I stayed with them full time, even though I was still going to school. So that derailed me in a different direction, because when it came time, I took law as a minor, I guess, all the way through to the last year. And then it came that decision, do I, quit my job because I was already working full time and go to law school? And then at that time, it just didn't seem to make financial sense, because I'm like, oh, so now I'm going to not make money for 3 years to go to law school. And it's just, I guess I lost the desire, and that I was already so built into that career. So I definitely wanted to climb the corporate ladder. That was where I was very, very focused for the 15 years that I was there. I was very identified with my title, very identified with just the recognition that comes with that, up until everything changed for me 11 years ago. But that, I mean, I can go into that if you like. That was just a personal shift that just took me in a different direction.
So yeah, we'll get into it. But what was I guess, why do you think you had those goals, or why do you think that like climbing the corporate ladder was important for you? So was it just kind of what you got out of reaching the next level and doing your job, or was there something about the way they structured the corporate environment that fit you well at that time?
It definitely fit me well. It was who I was being, and I have no regrets, and I don't look back and judge myself. That's exactly who I was at the time.
Yeah.
And it goes back to when I was born in Portugal and I moved to Canada when I was 10. And when I first moved to Canada, it was a very big life-changing event. But what I learned very quickly when I was that young is that what I had that I could capitalize on was my intellect, because it didn't fit in. Kids made fun of me and all of that. But all of a sudden I was getting good grades, and they're like, how do you get those grades you just got here. You barely speak English. Right. And I was
Right.
like, oh, this is a good thing. I'm going to run with this. Right. So,
Yeah.
yeah, my identity in wanting to climb the corporate ladder started back then, that this is a good thing. This is what I'm going to be known for. This is how I get attention and recognition. So that's really where it came from.
Right. There's that totally that thing when you're young and you want to be good at something, right? You want to
Yeah.
be and get that. And for me, I think I remember playing sports when I was a kid, and I was fine at it, but it wasn't like I was great, and I didn't know where that was going to go. And it's kind of like at some point you have to then direct your attention towards kind of the academic world and your job and what you're going to do. And yeah, I can see that as being a young person. You start doing well, you get praised at work, you start doing a good job and using a lot of the things that you were learning in school and just kind of getting that recognition, getting paid. And
Yes,
it's a good feeling, right? Like
it is.
yeah. So what changed for you then all of a sudden decided that you didn't want the corporate ladder anymore or that it wasn't right for you?
Yeah, I didn't. So that wasn't a decision that I made logically. What happened was the last year before I left corporate, I experienced really intense anxiety that it spent like almost a year before I was diagnosed, because it came out in a very physical way. So I would have my heart rate would go really high, like 160, 180, and it would last for days and days, usually 3, 4 days. And I would not sleep at all for those 3, 4 days. And my whole
Yeah.
body felt like it was like levitating. It was awful. I don't wish it on anyone to ever experience that. It was extreme. And after many, many, many tests, finally the doctors had said to me one day, like, we've tried everything. Like, you should probably just look at this as anxiety. And at that moment, I thought they were saying, well, go home and take care of yourself because we got nothing for you here. That's what I interpreted.
Right.
And at that time, I was working 12, 16-hour days. And I just felt like, well, I can't do both. I can't figure out a way. Like, now I have to use everything I got to figure out how to save in my life and help myself. So I can't do that and do my career. So I really meant to just take an exit out for a while. So I went in and quit my job, and, no one knew what was going on for me. So there was a tremendous amount of energy trying to keep that from the corporate world, because that just is not something you talk, at least back then. Stress is not something you talk about. If you're trying to climb the corporate ladder, you don't talk about that.
Right. You can't promote someone who's that weak, right? It's just like
No,
that
and
mentality of
exactly.
right?
And
Yeah.
that was very much the view at the time.
Yeah.
So no one knew. So I did have to really explain myself when I left, because my VP didn't know what that was coming from.
Yeah.
But I just felt like I didn't choose it as a decision. And it wasn't like, oh, I want to start my own business. I didn't even cross my mind at the time. I just felt like I need to go and have no pressure to come back. Because people have asked me, why didn't you take a leave of absence? And I knew at the time, if I do that, like 6 weeks, 3 months, whatever, I would have a target. I would have to be better by that time. And I knew that would be worse for me. So I just needed to be free. And then I figured I'll go back when I'm ready. But one thing led to the other. In 11 years, I still have never gone back.
Did something change at work that you, like, looking back on it, that you could identify as being, hey, when this happened or this pressure, or because I'm just wondering why that didn't happen sooner, maybe to you, or was there like, a certain, just reason for it happening when it did?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I definitely have looked back and tried to figure out the puzzle pieces. I look at it like it was just kind of the time to shift and do something else. There definitely was a lot happening at the same time. I had a family member that was going through cancer before that. I had just had my daughter. So this was like a year after I went back after I had my daughter. So I had 2 little kids. So there was a lot happening at the same time. And it was at the time that it was actually had took on a project where a lot of people, I don't know, in Canada, people would remember when Nortel kind of died.
Right.
And I was transitioning to Avaya, which is the new company that took a lot of their employees. So every day I was dealing with people that their whole world was falling apart. And this is the energy that I was in every single day. So if you combine all that, I'm sure that adds up to something.
Yeah. So were you, when you left, I guess, were you missing anything then in terms of that, I don't know, validation, gratification, or whatever that came from doing a good job that we sort of talked about in the outset? Were you did you find yourself sort of missing that?
Yes, absolutely. And not only that, I found myself having to rediscover who I am. Now, luckily, in trying to heal myself from anxiety, I went to the bookstore and I started to pick up self-help books, which I had never done before. And I did end up helping myself and healing myself from the anxiety in 8 months by this amazing little book that came to me. But I also started to read all these books, and I started to read about who are we really, how to build identity, how to build self-value. And it happened at the same time that I had absolutely no identity. I just, the crisis of identity was very real for the first couple of years. But at the same time, I had these resources that came into my world. So I started to build from scratch, really. And I started to look at what validation is there from that recognition that I got? Is that really me? And then started to actually build a value that was more authentic to who I really am. So it kind of came together at the same time.
Did you work with a coach?
I have worked with several coaches throughout the
Yeah.
years. Yeah, I have. And I guess some of them, you could call them coaches, you can call them facilitators, mentors, but I definitely have. I mean, as a coaching came to me later on because I started consulting in product development at first, but I would never have the confidence in what I do as a coach if I hadn't gotten a coach. Because when I started to work with really good coaches and started to see what they did for me, and I was like, oh my God, I can do this for other people. That really built my confidence in being a coach. So I
Yeah.
always recommend to people when they are starting out doing anything, consulting, anything, like go get that done for yourself. Like do that.
Yeah. So it was okay. So you had to leave the corporate world, and you knew that you probably couldn't go back and do something similar. And so, I imagine you had this sort of realization, okay, I need to now find something else. And you're reading about it, you're trying to figure out, and I think more than anything, sounds like you were trying to figure out who you were and figure out where you wanted to go next. How did you realize that stumbling upon kind of consulting and maybe coaching was the right thing to do? Like, what's the process that you go? And I'm thinking about other people and them thinking, maybe they're going through the same sort of thing. How do they go about, like, do you need a coach, or how do you go about sort of figuring out what that thing is for you in this midlife crisis of hey, I need to do something else kind of mentality?
Yes. And I mean, everybody's going to experience this in a different way. So the way that it played out for me is that after I left my job and I was home for a couple months, the anxiety of being home doing nothing was worse. I was like, what did I do? This is worse. So actually,
Oh,
and
no.
it was like, now I'm just here, I'm with myself all day long.
Yeah.
So within a couple of months, I actually enrolled to study nutrition because I thought, well, let me just go do something first that will help with the anxiety because there's that part of it, but also that I can go out of the house every day. And it was there that I met people that were starting businesses. They were starting service or product businesses, and they had the idea, they had the enthusiasm and all the great intentions, but they didn't have the business understanding and the mechanics of building a product and bringing it to market. So at first, I just started helping people, and then I quickly realized, I'm like, well, I could just do this for people and like consult. So that's how consulting came about. It was really organic, funny enough, at nutrition school, but it was really organic. And I never meant to be a nutritionist. I just wanted to learn. And I started to consult from there. And the focus really was just product lifecycle consulting and bringing products just to market and helping people, entrepreneurs and business owners that were more in the multi-million dollar entrepreneurs. And it was really probably 2-3 years ago that I really started to take all of that philosophy of actually launching products and services, but really helping people to start their businesses from scratch, taking the same philosophy of what it actually takes to get something off the ground and then working with newer entrepreneurs. But back then it really was more working with building, new products or services. So for me, it did kind of like one thing led to the other, led to the other. I have worked with clients that have come to me looking for a coach because they are, they have that desire and they want to coach right day one. And we've done amazing things. They've built beautiful product services business very quickly because they've had the advantage of having that. At that time when I started, I didn't even know what a coach was. That actually came to me probably 3-4 years after I was consulting. The coaching showed up for me. So I didn't even, you can't go to somewhere where you don't know it exists, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's why we all want to be, firefighters and teachers and policemen, because that's why we don't know. And then we eventually have to learn about kind of all the other jobs out there, I guess.
Exactly. Oh, there's so many, right? That we
Yeah.
just don't have access to.
You just don't, I tried to start a podcast so I could tell people about it. But why do you think running your own business or consulting is less stressful? I'm thinking of people thinking about this because in theory, like now you have the pressure of bringing in your own clients and it's all you managing the relationship. And like some people could see that as being, a more more stressful environment. How did you kind of approach it?
Yes, and I would agree that in many cases it can actually be more stressful. So, because I did do all that work to heal myself and to, look at the psychology of it and who are we as humans, what's going on with our mind, how do our thoughts work, how does the brain work. That's how I learned to manage stress. So I would never say that being an entrepreneur is less stressful than corporate.
Yeah.
And if for everybody's going to experience that differently. There's a lot more ingredients in being an entrepreneur that can create stress than for me in corporate. So before I had that year of anxiety, I didn't really find my job really stressful. I actually found I was always really good at what I did. I figured out how to be good. Maybe that took a few months. And then when I'd get bored, I'd get a new job. I'd look for a promotion because I'd get bored in it. So I never really experienced like intense stress because of the job. Like the anxiety, again, I think came from accumulation of things. So when I look at everything that I had a team, I had people that did my PowerPoints. I just called this person to do this. Like
Yeah.
being on my own, the ingredients definitely are there that will, I think, create even more stress. But this is why what I do is like always a mix of business and personal, because it's the only thing I can in integrity do. Because as an entrepreneur, yeah, there's going to be a roller coaster ride. There's going to be a ton of things coming your way. So many things you have to learn. And then so much that even human interactions that you have to deal with. So the only way that I've gotten, good at it and better at it is just because I've done the work to understand how does our bodies experience stress and where does that come from? And then how do we lessen that or manage that in a way? It's not that I don't experience stress. I think we're human. I don't know if that's realistic, but it's like, how do I process it through my body so it doesn't stay in it?
Right. And that you're not that, like in your case, you were losing sleep over it and combined with anxiety and also probably not functioning as efficiently as you could. Whereas actually sometimes stress can actually make you, or if it's, if you manage it properly, I think is what you're saying, it can actually be a positive thing where you can kind of channel that stress to get what you need done quickly and then, off your plate kind of thing.
You can, yeah, there's a ton of techniques. Again, like we said, there's so many jobs we don't even know about, right? So many careers and businesses we don't know about. There are so many things that we can do as human beings to make our experience better. But it's just like most of us don't know. We just don't know.
Yeah. Okay. And so you were consulting then more along the lines of product development. So people would come to you with an idea. And this was it when you started doing this, was it the same sort of thing? Typically like a technology type product and they were trying to, launch something new. Is that what your expertise was kind of before you got into the peer coaching?
Yeah, building new products and services. And because I started out in the health industry, that really was the beginning was in health industry. And then it started also building online courses because a lot of, traditional businesses were looking to have an online component. So in building service, building product, definitely that's kind of, the beginning pieces. And the coaching really came from a client, actually a consulting client where our contract was done in consulting because those are timed contracts.
Yeah.
And she recognized coaching skills in me. And she said, well, can we just transfer this over and actually do some coaching and keep going? And I was like, well, say more. What is it that you'd like me to do for you? Because I'm like, what does that mean? So it really was an experiment with her. And then she started referring and then other people started referring. And actually before I knew it, I was like, I guess I'm a consultant and a coach. And it, again, it did show up very organically.
So how do you now kind of balance then? I mean, you talked about, I guess, maybe the unique thing about your coaching and how you approach kind of this consulting coaching combination is that it's not just the business angle and trying to make as much money as possible. Part of it as well is yourself and the person. So how do you do that? How do you go about creating the right situation for people when they are trying to start something, which is probably new, right? I mean, it's probably, you're dealing with entrepreneurs. So it's kind of like, hey, I'm trying to create new things.
Yes.
How do you work? How do you do that?
Yeah, so I have a group program that I put most of my new entrepreneurs in, unless there's an absolute need that they need one-on-one support. Most of them I do put in the group because it's more affordable, and then they also have community, and it takes them through the 4 phases of product development, business development, in explore, plan, develop, and launch. And in those 4 phases, there's both the business side of it and what you're going to most typically face on the personal side of it. So there is that organization component of what I've seen for 20 years, both in my product knowledge and business development, as well as then, the intense 10 years of my own personal development. So life will always serve you up what you need to work at the moment. although I have this very neat package that's a 4-month program that people can do online, it's an online course, I also do a weekly coaching call for my group so that when they are actively going through something in their lives, it's not going to match that week in the program. That just doesn't usually happen. They're
Yeah.
going to come to the call and they're going to, I'm just about to price my product. And I'm running into like, yeah, I look at the market, I do all the tool strategies we need to look at how it should market, competitive analysis and all that. But I am just, my body is shaking and I'm terrified to price at this price point. And then we deal with, well, what's really going on there, which is usually it's usually, what is it that you view money as and beliefs. And that just shows up as that particular challenge at that moment. If you are consciously and actively going through your business and not shoving your human being like over to the side and saying, okay, forget it, I'm just going to keep going, then you will, every day, these things will show up for you. So we just deal with them. We just deal with them as they come up.
Gotcha. And so how do you, I guess, who's the ideal person that would probably then be in your program? It sounds like it's someone who has an idea, but then that's it.
Yeah. So the ideal, yes, the
Yeah.
ideal client that comes to me, and I don't have any. Nobody can purchase buy button for this program. They do have to come through me, and I do have to have an application form, and we do have to have a call to make sure that everybody's a match in this group because it's
Right.
it's a beautiful environment and a great community, but it has to be a win-win for the person coming in and for the people that are already there. So the ideal person is somebody that is looking for freedom. That's the number one thing I hear all the time. They're looking for it to own their time. They're looking to, be able to express who they are in a business. They're looking to be able to, put something that's, near and dear to their heart out into the world. They want that business assistance and business knowledge, but they also are interested and wanting and desiring to be able to protect themselves, their well-being, as well as know more about discovering who they really are and how they can actually bring that out into the brand and into all areas of their business. So I do ask some typical questions when I get on a call with somebody, and I can quickly tell if somebody's a match. Like I said earlier, if somebody is looking for pure business growth, there are a ton of coaches, and I have referrals that I can send people to that's what they do, and they do a great job at it. But in my program and with my people, it is somebody that is very much willing to do that inner work. I'm never going to convince anybody to do it. I'm never going to tell anybody they should do it. They already have to come curious to want to do that work.
Right. Otherwise, you're just not going to get enough out of it. You're not going to take that away if you're. If you
it wouldn't be right for them.
Yeah,
no.
like you're like, okay, that's helpful information. I'm not going to do it, but that's good
exactly.
to know, kind of thing, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, so like the part that I'm like pretty interested in then too as well is that decision and what people need to actually make that decision to say either leave the corporate world, whether that be forever or temporarily, and pursue something, like pursue some idea that they have in developing a new product and becoming an entrepreneur. Do you see people like I've talked to certain individuals, again, same thing on this podcast, and they seem to say that, hey, there's a certain age where people kind of have this crisis, some point in their 30s where they think, hey, what am I doing in the corporate world? I need to go and do something else. Do you find that? Like, do you find that there's a particular set of circumstances that are creating this in people's minds that, hey, it may be the time for me to go and try to do something on my own or actually develop this product idea that I've had on myself?
Yeah, so age, I don't see that. So I have people in my program that are 24 and 66, like range. That's the range currently, right? So I don't see an age thing. What I do hear, it's words that I hear that I can tell you I hear all the time. So the freedom, definitely top of the line. They just start to feel that they want the freedom.
Right.
And then the other pieces I hear a lot is, I know I'm meant for more. I just know that this isn't my path to just keep putting in my years and then retire. And they just feel it, like they just cannot, this would be like, I'm going to be settling for this, but I know I'm meant for more. So the freedom and meant for more are the most common words that I hear from people that are just, they get to that point where they know that they have to at least take a chance. Now, a lot of the clients that I work with, especially the clients in my group program, they are doing this part-time. So they're not necessarily being like, let's throw it, like caution to the wind and go out there, because I don't believe, and I don't like to limit anybody, but I don't believe that you're going to be creative and be what an entrepreneur needs to be, which really number one thing is to be able to have some creative ideas when you don't know how you're going to take care of your basic needs next month. That's a very hard thing to ask of a human being, to like be
Right.
creative and then not know how they're going to eat. So I do not encourage that at all. I always ask, one of the number one things I ask when I meet a new person that's considering this is what is the financial status? Can you afford not to work for a year? Like, do you have that ability if you're going to do this full time? Because the business is going to take time for it to pay you. You've got to pay other things. You got to invest back in the business. So do you have that ability to go full time? And a lot of people, they just don't. So it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just means then you got to look at this as part time, which is going to take longer to get to whatever goals or where you're trying to do to a launch. But it's 100% doable. I've seen it over and over and over. People build really successful businesses just doing it a little bit at a time on part-time basis.
And it's a great way to see if you like it or not. If you get some traction, if you just want to do some sort of like proof of concept and throw it out there and see if it makes sense for
Yeah,
you
for sure.
and fitting it in. And then yeah, if you really really like it and you still want to do it and you get super excited about it and it's the happiest part of your day, then fine. Then maybe quit your job and do it. But you don't have to do it. No, I'm totally on board with that. And think that's the case. And I think it's interesting what you said about, I'm what was it? I meant for more, or
Yes, I'm meant for more. I hear
I meant for
that
more.
very often.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think there's more? Why can't we get that more out of the corporate world? Like
You
why
know,
yeah, why do we
yeah.
need to have our own thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have friends that have stayed in the corporate world, since when we were in university together, and they're still in corporate. They're in very high levels of corporate, and they're very, very happy. So I
Yeah.
just think it's different people for different things, right? So I don't think it is corporate or entrepreneur, and that's where it is, or that's where it is. I think it just happens. It's just, I don't know, depending on people's beliefs, sometimes destiny, what you're meant to do, it's coming for you. I don't know. There's so many ways to look at it, but definitely I have people that I'm close to that absolutely love their corporate careers
Yeah.
and would the thought of running a business are like, you're crazy. Why would you do that to yourself? Like,
Right. Right. You're just adding, you're saying, I now, instead of just there's a one role that I have to do in a company, which I feel good, and I have to do all the roles in the company to
yes,
begin with. Like, why would you take that on? Right. Like, it seems kind of crazy at
exactly.
times. But yeah, there's something, I guess, yeah, I don't know if it's romantic about it. I've tried to search for that as well too. And I at times I wonder whether it is some form of self-expression as well, where almost like a modern 2021 art form where you're saying to yourself, if I work at Amazon, like there's no, like, it's Amazon, like it's not me. I'm not doing anything for that company. This isn't who I am, is whatever. Like I can't tangibly do anything that I can then really show people and show the world. But if you create a product, that can be yours. Like there's so much about it that you can then say, hey, I made this. Hey, I did this. This is me. This is what I think the world would benefit from. This is because really when we're creating a business, we're trying to solve a problem for people. And it's like, hey, this is the
Yes.
problem that people have. And now I am going to create this product and help people with this problem that they have. And that's good. Right. And not to say that what Amazon doesn't, but it can be hard maybe when you are absorbed by this corporate world to then feel like you're a part of it, especially when there's thousands of other people also contributing. I don't know. I
It,
wonder if that's it. But
yeah, I hear that a lot of just wanting something of my own out there. And it is, I mean, I honestly I can see I've seen so many different versions of that desire, like when people explain what happens. But the one thing I can say is that the desire is real. So if you are very much okay or happy with your job and the thought of a business doesn't occur to you, it's not in your desire, it's not in the wanting, it's not in your field, then don't ever think about it like, maybe I should do a business. No, it's just not for you. It's not present for you. The people that come to me, they'll tell me sometimes for years, it's like I can't get it off my mind. I don't even have an idea. I don't know why I have this desire. I don't even have an idea, but it's just present for them. It's very much something that shows up for them. And I don't know if you can, I'm sure, exactly break it down, but you'd have a large spectrum of reasons. But I always tell people, just go in and is it true for you? Is there a desire to even explore it? And if there is, then you can explore it part-time and you don't have to, take huge risks to explore it. But I don't think that we should leave desires that are, coming to us, especially over time, unfulfilled. I think that's kind of sad to me.
right, it's kind of like you shouldn't have this. when you're retiring or you die or whenever that moment
Yes.
is, you shouldn't have this like, oh, I wish I did all these things and took these risks, and because you're just, that's that, like you can't you
Yeah.
can't go back. So it's, why not kind of do it. Do you think though, like how do you then make that leap without sort of jeopardizing your career track? Like, were you worried about that in leaving your job and like, hey, I've built all of this. Here's my reputation. Here's what people know about me. Here's the expertise. Here's what people pay me for. Like, were you worried about that at all when you had to leave the corporate world?
Because of the circumstances that I left, and I was worried about like just surviving, because when you
Yeah.
have that kind of intense anxiety, you kind of feel like you're having a heart attack almost every other hour, right? So in that survival mode, I was really just wanted to get through to the next day. So I didn't have the capacity to worry about that at that time, like within that first year that I left. But afterwards, once it took me 8 months to fully heal from that anxiety. And when the dust settled, yes, then all the identity crisis and that feeling of like, oh my, like that was a lot of work. It was like education plus, work
Yeah.
experience, 20 years, right?
Right.
So I definitely did process that. And it's processing human emotions. There was like some regret, there was like second thoughts. And at the same time, these consulting contracts were happening. So then it was like, well, but I'm doing this and I'm actually making good money. So I'm okay for now. Like, we'll see next year. And actually, for many years, I was just like, well, let's see next year. And I did. I mean, I left corporate with some amazing, excellent relationships because, I built those relationships over time. So I always felt confident that when the time came, if I needed to go back, I could just make a phone call. I even would have people sometimes just calling and checking if I wanted to go back. So
Yeah.
that gave me that confidence so for years, probably up until a couple of years ago, I always just said, oh, one more year, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that, like, how confident did you feel about being able to go back and getting a job that you might like in the corporate world, or not, maybe not for the same company, but kind of in the same field.
Yes, and
But it
and that
sounds,
I did. Yes, I did feel confident because I built relationships. So
yeah,
I mean, that's true in business. That's true in corporate, right?
yeah,
I had the relationships that I knew, and the relationships that I had kept going up and up and up. So they had more and more clout, right?
right.
So I felt very confident that was an option if I wanted to exercise it.
Yeah. And I mean, I felt the exact same boat when I sort of left my job that I had done again for the same 10 plus years, was that, hey, I'm well qualified to go back. Like, it's something that I think I can do in the future if I want to. There's no reason there's nothing going to change. Fine, I'm not going to be advancing anymore if I go do something else, but in many ways, like, I might actually be in different ways. But yeah, it's always going to be there if I want to then get back in that industry again. It's not crazy to think that something that you've worked in for, again, you spent 20 plus years doing it, that you then could get a job with again in the future. Like, it's I didn't see that as one of the risks per se. It was more one of, the leap itself. And am I going to be good at, I spent 10, 20 years being good at this thing. I think I was good at it. Am I going to be good at the new thing? And whether that
Yes.
would actually prove out or not. That was probably the hard thing to think about, I think.
Oh, yes, agreed. And I think that happens over and over and over. I've worked with clients that are doing global launches, their businesses are at 50 million. And then at that point that they're going from a national launch to a global launch, they're questioning, can I do this?
Yeah.
So I don't think that ever really goes away. We're human. We're going to process those events and those emotions as circumstances come up.
Do you miss anything then about the corporate world and the satisfaction you used to get?
For a very long time, I missed the team.
Yeah.
Really missed having a team. I missed having support.
Yeah.
And I learned to invest in my business, which helped with that. But I really missed having a team. I missed, just even being in the office. And I always had it very flexible. I never worked 9 to 5 ever in my career. I was always in and out of the office going to clients, but I missed even going to the office a couple times a week. And then I did miss that for a long time. And it really has been the last couple of years that I've built like an amazing community. I mean, I think COVID really helped for people online to connect, because now I have this community of people from all over the world that, even though we just, we never see each other physically, I feel like I have my team back. And so now I don't miss much anymore, but years and years I miss that connection and that team.
Yeah, I definitely get the sense, like you mentioned, COVID-19. I think impacting people, because that is a big part that people enjoy, is having people at work that you can commiserate over, on social things, not only work things, and just to have that sort of social interaction, which are by working from home all the time are sort of missing. And yeah, I totally hear you. I think from the corporate world perspective, you do have definitely sort of missed that a little bit. I remember telling people I would go to these kind of these networking sessions. This is pre-COVID, where you just go and talk to a bunch of other sort of entrepreneurs, people who were doing different things, and it was nice just to have kind of them and and to meet really random people in
Yes.
Toronto that were doing something similar, in their lives. But having that, because that used to be kind of what the satisfaction you got, or the benefit you got from talking to kind of your coworkers. And so, yeah, I think there's something about that, I think, as well, where I think you're on the right track, that we sort of miss when you take the leap and go do something on your own, until you build that, until you sort of can build something around you that is support, and maybe a new team yourself, which sounds like
Yes.
you've got now. So what advice then would you have for people, just in terms of what you get out of owning your own business? Like you said for yourself that, maybe the circumstances were a bit different in how you got into it, but now that you're sort of in it, and now that you do sort of own own what you're doing, and a lot of the components of it, what do you see now as sort of the benefits of being on your own, and a coach and a consultant, and being able to kind of decide a lot of these things for yourself?
I mean, the number one benefit is the freedom, which is what I hear from people. It's what I say. I remember the first couple of years after I left corporate, and I would just go to the grocery store like in the middle of the day, and I just felt this joy. I can do this. Like I could just do this. And there's this freedom of like, I'm not, like I'm not getting in trouble for this, right? This is totally cool. Like I give myself permission to go do this during this hour. There's this freedom of choice. So I love the fact that I am in control of my calendar. And I do have an online booking, but I decide which times that are people can book my calendar. I decide when meetings go in my calendar. I can shift things around. If I get into, again, prioritizing well-being, if it's like, no, I got to take a day, it's necessary. I can move things around. I can take a day. I can choose who I work with, which is so important. I choose my clients. I choose my partners. I choose my team. I choose the people that support me. That is just, to me, it's just a feeling. It's a feeling of just freedom. And also what you mentioned earlier is putting something out into the world that has an impact. So when I look at my clients and the businesses that they've put out into the world, and I remember it's like helping to birth a baby, right? Because it's like the early conversations we were having, it was an idea and they were just thinking about it. Then I see them launching this product or service. Then I see their clients interacting and they give me their client testimonials and they're, in so much joy. And then I see like that part that I played with them and I start to see this spider web impact. And that I didn't notice in corporate. I didn't see that as much. Whereas I can see, from one conversation and all of a sudden it's like, look at all of these people that are being serviced by this business. And that is just, it's an absolutely amazing feeling. And I treasure that I get to experience that gift.
Yeah, no, and I meant to sort of ask this to you earlier, but do you think that we have a tendency, or that we can get sort of trapped in big companies?
Of course, right? I mean, again, I left in under crazy circumstances, but I had, it was legacy pension, which, a lot of corporations in Canada switched that out and the pensions are not what they used to be. But I was still in that legacy pension world. Everybody thought I was insane when I left. That's why so many people tried to convince me. But I couldn't even compute that. But of course, right? When there's the fact that, what you're looking at the future and your future will be taken care of and you'll have all of this coming in and this guaranteed and then stock options and of
Yeah.
course, of course. And sometimes I think, when I look back at how I exited, I do believe that there was some divine component to that. Because again, with my identity, with everything that I had, the pension, the stock options, if I had thought of that logically, I don't think I ever would have left.
Right. Right. But you at some point have to think about, yeah, what are you ultimately trying to get at, and where you're trying to go, and is this the right way?
Exactly.
But I hear you, and I sort of wondered that as well with as I see housing prices going up and up all the time, and people trying to say, buy a house, which has been this amazing investment for a lot of people over the past, I don't know, 20, 30 years. And just the way though that it can kind of trap you in the sense that you think, okay, well, I need this house, I really want to live here, okay, I'm going to stretch and get this mortgage and put all my savings into this. And now, but the thing is, now I can't leave my job ever, because
Yes.
I have signed up for such a such a large payment that there's just no way. And maybe you have a few other expenses along those way, and it kind of, I wonder to the extent that it sort of traps us in some ways, where you just don't have the flexibility to go through that. And so it kind of adds to the anxiety and the stress that you have in especially if you don't like what you're doing, because you think, okay, I can't do this anymore, I can't be able to afford this whole lifestyle that I've built. And so I wonder, and I think to a certain extent, like there are ways to kind of get out of that, but it can be hard, I think, to kind of get yourself out of some situation like that.
Yes,
um,
it takes a courageous step forward, and that's why I love the option that you can build something potentially slowly, but you can build something part-time.
yeah,
And that option is real. I mean, I have a lot of people question and say, how? People are working so many hours in their job. How is that possible? And they don't believe it's possible. I promise you it is. I've watched it over and over and over again. People just create successful things. Not in a year, not in 18 months, usually 3, 4 years before they're at a place where then they have a choice. And
yeah,
some people have gone faster, but typically, if you're doing it part time and you have a busy job, it's sometimes 3, 4 years. And then you're in the place of like, well, now I could. Do I want to yet? No, maybe I'll wait it out. Maybe a few more months or a year, but it will take some time. But there's definitely an option to go slower, but satisfy that.
yeah. And I think if it's passion and something that you like, it won't feel like work, I think, is how, one of the things I always
You're
tell
right. And
people
then
is
you know
that
what it
you have to want to
is?
do it. So
Yes,
yeah,
it's the feeling. So a lot of people say that too. And there's a lot of bad social media that says entrepreneurs sit by the beach with their laptops and do nothing. And I don't know any of those entrepreneurs. I've never met them. I don't know if that's true at all. But it is the work that you're doing. How does it feel? That is definitely it. It's not that you're absolutely do nothing, but you're doing things that you enjoy. So they seem to just go by faster. Time
yeah,
just goes by and there isn't that, you don't feel like you're in the prison. But 100% is the feeling of it, not the actual action of doing stuff.
yeah. How do you manage the stress in that you'll inevitably have in your business? Do you have any kind of coping mechanisms or things that you do that help you just deal with it?
Yes, I have a ton. I'll give you high level. For as I mentioned with the way I started out, I dedicate myself to personal development. So I do constantly for years and years. I did a ton of like seminars and read books and had mentors. So I've done a lot of work to understand myself. So first of all, I understand what's causing that beginning of the stress. So if I start to react to something, I can tune into my body in the first early stages of something's just triggered me. I can feel my heart rate elevate. I can feel the stress at the early stages, and then I can sit for a moment and kind of, okay, what just happened? Someone said something, it triggered something in me. Is it a belief system that's showing up? Is it just, something, is a pattern, something else that I need to either make a note and work on it when I have time, or something I can process in the moment? And then I have, tools like a routine. Like I like to do unique things all the time. I'm not really amazing at routines, but there are little things that I do in routine, meaning like before when I end my day, I don't work up until the last minute and then go to bed. Like that doesn't work for me at all. So there has to be a way to manage my schedule that there's plenty of like time to be on my own in the evenings and not have like an end of day, like work day that ends the day. I also look at my schedule the day before. I always look and see what's coming up tomorrow in terms of my calendar, as well as what do I have in my reminders and my to-dos. Does that match? Because often, we'll have like a ton of to-dos and things. I got to get this done tomorrow, and then a full day of meetings. Well, you know what's going to happen that day. You're going to be stressed all day because you're going to keep seeing the reminders, or you're going to keep seeing the notifications, and you're going to have the next meeting and the next meeting. So I'll actually go through that and align it so I can move my notifications, my reminders to another day, because I'm like, oh, I have a full day of calls. Like I'm not going to be able to do this. I'll move it to another day so that doesn't come up and stress me. So do I experience stress? Of course, but I have so many things that are implemented over time that make it manageable. I've never ever experienced anxiety since I left corporate. I spent those 8 months really dealing with it and managing through it. And after that, I experienced stress, but not extreme anxiety. And I think a lot of that is that I've dedicated myself to learn the tools, the strategies, and then I apply them. That's the big difference.
Yeah. No, I think that's helpful. I think there's a certain awareness of it, of just spending the time to think, okay, what is stressing me out? How is it doing this? And then how can I cope with it? And then, developing the strategies that have outlined. But yeah, like I think what you mentioned earlier too, like sometimes it's not obvious. You have to start reading books or researching it. And it's so obvious when you do read it and you feel silly that you didn't know it, but you can then discover some of these methods and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense.
And
This
then
is what's
apply
happening to
them.
me. Yeah, like
Right.
then it's up to you. So what so this is my last question, but what, as you think about the goals for yourself and your business as you continue it on for the next however many years, what are you thinking about and what are those goals?
So my goals have shifted over time, as so many things, as I continue to evolve and learn new things. And I'm an avid reader, so I'm always reading and discovering and learning from new people. So personally, my main goal is just to continue to evolve and to continue to learn from other people and make that time. And it is something that I dedicate time to make sure there's time to develop myself and grow myself as a human being. And for my business, my goals have shifted within the last year to allow for more flow and opportunities to show up without so much effort and push. So it is very natural to me. I'm very naturally structured. I also have goals that I always would push forward, push forward. So I'm just at a stage, and this isn't me telling people to be here. It's just where I am right now, where what I am allowing myself to do is what could this look like, and actually do a lot more visualization and dreaming and thinking way bigger than I could in goals, and allowing for the opportunities to show up. And I see that happening already. I see things showing up for me. It's like, where did that come from? And then I can sit with it and see, what would that mean if I took that on? And actually knowing what's an authentic yes and what's an authentic no. So it's actually, I'm going through this phase of allowing for more flow and less planning and structure, because this is where I'm at. Now, I work with a lot of my clients when they first transition from job to business to structure and to plan,
Yeah.
because that's very needed at different times. I'm 11 years into being on my own and to being in my business, and I've done different things in consulting. I've also worked with clients on different product opportunities, and so I'm at a stage where I feel like there's shifts and changes coming, and I'm just allowing for some moments of flow. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's interesting. And I see where you're coming from in doing it, but yeah, for some people that can just not be the right thing. You kind of need that structure. You need to have a plan, otherwise you just go in all directions. But yeah, it changes, I think, when you're in it for a while.
Yes. Yeah. And it's the right thing for the right person at the
Yeah.
right time. That's the number one thing that I hope that I do bring to people when I work with them, is that they actually learn how to find out what's right for them.
Yeah.
And then they continue to have that system that they can apply anytime in their lives. And I don't create any dependency, and they don't have to work with me forever, but I help them to create that system where they're constantly knowing how to go inside and know what's good and right for me in this moment. And that in itself takes time to learn. And there is a system and there's strategies and there's tools to do that. But when you can really trust yourself and believe that, okay, whatever comes my way, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to know what's good and right for me. That in itself is very empowering.
Yeah. Great. Well, is there a good way, or what is the best way for people if they want to learn more about you or follow you generally?
The best way is actually, if you go to my website, it's sandraifrancisco.com. There's a free course on there. So if you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, it helps you to choose the best business idea for you and gets you started in your business. As well, there you can see my social. So if you want to DM me on Instagram or send me a message on LinkedIn, if you have a question, if you're starting a business and you have a question, I may not get back to you right away because I prioritize my time, but I will get back to you. So feel free to send out a question and I'll get back to you.
Great. Okay. I will link to that as well. Other than that, I just want to thank you for being a guest on the podcast. It was great. Great to learn your story. I hope it inspires people who may be thinking about something along the lines themselves. I know there is no shortage of them. So yeah, I appreciate your insights and chatting with me today.
Thank you. This was lovely. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that story. If there are any guests that you think would be great for the podcast, definitely go to lifetimeatwork.com and there you can suggest one. And I will be back soon enough with another episode. So until then, don't worry, be happy.